Hello viewers and listeners, welcome to this special town hall style discussion related to the PPC's second year in office. I'm your moderator, Stacey Carmichael. Today on the panel we have Mr. Timothy Tucker. He's the president of the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Then we have Mr. Paul Cheong, chairman of the Private Sector Commission, and Mr. Gerald Gouveia, senior vice president of the GCCI. Welcome, gentlemen. Now, today we'll be having discussions surrounding the theme, Guyana's development trajectory, demand for new and modern infrastructure. Now, gentlemen, my first question to you would be, where were we as a country pre-2020 from an economic standpoint? And I will go with Mr. Tucker because he's closest to me.
Where we were before 2020, I would take it back to where we were before the discovery of oil, and then move it forward a bit. Of course, things began to change rapidly in Guyana since the discovery of oil. But then we did hit, even though that would have changed the trajectory and it changed the outlook, it didn't really change the reality on the ground as yet. And we were moving at a very slow pace, but with the expectations that good stuff will come. Unfortunately, we went into a difficult time between the end of 2018 and going into the whole election cycle, and that kind of just, stalled our entire private sector development and the development of the country. Flash forward now, we seem to be getting our act together, moving in the direction the private sector wants to see it move. And I think that in all, it really sums up what has happened and what is happening and what is going to happen going forward. We were in an economic, as I said, stall. We were stalled economically because the private sector was not embraced the way that it should have been embraced. And that is the period between 2015 and 2020. If the private sector was embraced and allowed to be the engine of growth, we probably would have been in a much better position, even in terms of where we are in terms of local content. Had the previous government acted in the speed that this government had acted in terms of putting the local content legislation in place when we went to them in 2017, I think the private sector would have been a little bit ahead, or a lot more ahead than where we are right now in terms of what we've done with local content. So I think that is a balance in terms of how we look at the economy pre-2020.
Mr. Cheong, your views?
Timothy touch on oil, but I want to look on the economic policy that we had prior to 2020. I mean, the tax burden on the citizen and the businesses was huge during that period. I mean, we've seen the reversal of many of those new taxes. There are many new taxes that came on which is a burden. I mean, businesses, when they make profit, they're able to expand, they're able to employ more people, they're able to pay better wages, and the economy grows. When you take away that money, the reverse happens, right? The businesses contract, and even, I mean, to put it in regular, if somebody, I mean, able to take home $100, they can do a day with that. If you take away part of it, then the amount of things that they can do, like take, for instance, expanding their home, repairing the home, doing some kind of, investing in this education, investing in the child's education, those things you can't do. Businesses, and that was a big burden on the economy. And during that period, we've seen, with the reversal of those things, businesses and the economy start to expand. Yes, indeed, oil has complemented the expansion, and it will continue to. But the policies, I think, is a big difference between that period and now.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Gouveia, your take on the economic situation during that period?
So without getting into the oil and gas side of it, I think leadership was the biggest change that we had. In terms of the level of engagement that we are seeing now versus the level of engagement that we saw pre-2020, that is having a direct effect on our economy. I've said it time and time again, and you've heard it time and time again, that you can have all of the resources in the world. If you do not manage it correctly, you're not going to end up anywhere. You know what I mean? You have people like Shaquille O'Neal. He is a big NBA star. He is now almost a billionaire because he has invested in other things. He's managed his money properly. Then we have MC Hammer, which is arguably one of the biggest music stars in our history, and he is flat broke because he could not manage his own economic status. So I would say it comes down to the leadership that we are seeing. Pre-2020, we did not have the level of engagement. They weren't in the communities. They weren't talking to the business sector. They were not talking to their subject matter experts, and they were making decisions relatively centralized without proper input from the people that is going to be affecting. What we are seeing now is that level of engagement has literally skyrocketed, in that, every weekend you see the ministers out there in the communities. You see the president himself. If there's a flood, if there's an issue, he is there in his rain boots. You know what I mean? And that level of engagement is admirable, and it actually has a direct reflection on our economy. So yes, oil is great, but as we have seen in places like Venezuela and even Trinidad, if you do not have proper leadership, you can have all the oil in the world, it won't make a difference. So I can tell you that, very recently, the GCCI, we had a meeting with the government, with the AG led by the president, Tim Tucker, and it was, Tim, six years, I think it was, right, that we could not meet the AG's office as the Chamber of Commerce, and here we are in 2022, meeting with the AG's office whilst he is in the CCJ defending the elections petition, whilst he is coming out with legislation. So they're making the time to see you so that we can tell them what economic things that we're having. I'm fortunate enough to wear another hat as the president of the Aircraft Owners Association, and whilst the president was meeting with the National Tushals Council right here, he had actually called upon us, and they had concerns with the cost of air travel in the country. And the very next day, the president organized us as the Aircraft Owners Association to come and interact with the National Tushal Council. And out of that interaction, we have now developed a task force to deal with a direct from consumer to supplier issues when it comes to air travel in the country. So this is the kind of pragmatism and engagement that is leading to economic growth in the country. So we're very lucky to be in an oil boom, but we're even luckier to have the right leadership who's guiding us through it.
Thank you very much. Now, progressing from that question, where do you see Guyana now in terms of national transformation, the trajectory?
So in terms of the national transformation, it's only going to be going up. Once the government continues to listen, once the government continues to engage with the subject matter experts, with the business organizations like the Chamber of Commerce, the private sector, and so on, you will continue to see a positive trajectory. We have a chance now as Guyanese to be ahead of the curve, and luckily we have been. But if our leadership stops listening to us, if the leadership believes that they know it all, then we will regress back to what it was pre-2020, where you could not get a meeting with the government. They weren't not listening to the subject matter experts. And then what happened is that they started making decisions in their vacuum or a silo. And then that was having a negative effect on the economy. As the chairman of the private sector mentioned, we were overtaxed. And that was because they weren't listening to the people on the ground. So I think that we have a very positive, strong growth in our country's economic future. And once our leadership continues to listen to us as the people, they will continue to serve us as they have been.
Thank you. Mr. Cheong, what is your contribution in relation to Guyana's national transformation trajectory?
I strongly believe, and I think that this is the entire private sector view, on that Guyana, I mean, it is a bright future in store for our country and our people. What we've seen now, I mean, is the beginning. There are many things that that are going to be put in place in the gas to shore project that would help so much to transform our raw material that we are blessed. I mean, so many. Thank you. So many raw material we have, and we are exporting just raw material. Those can be converted to higher value products. The bridges, the road infrastructure that would help people to get from one place to the next with much more ease than we currently do. We know of the troubles in the morning to get to work. For many of us who live across the river, even I mean on the east bank, but that is easy, but it will get better and better as we build more road and get the whole road network upgraded. We've seen the Guyana economy is growing close to 60% this year. I mean, that's extraordinary by any means, and you know that will continue to happen in the future as we continue to add more FPSOs and take more oil out. We feel that that would also help to attract more people to Guyana. We've seen it. I mean, many of the people who we never thought would have wanted to come here, coming here and looking for opportunities. On a daily basis, at the private sector, we're meeting foreign businesses that want to come and you know, do business in Guyana and want to partner with other private sector companies. These were unheard of before oil. I mean, I think we are now on the map. And as Jerry Jr. said, it's important that, you know, we learn from the mistake of others. And I think the government, we've seen that. I mean, they have embraced private sector. We never had a government that embraced private sector like the current 𝐎𝐅𝐅𝐈𝐂𝐄, Dr. 𝐎�𝐅𝐅𝐈𝐂𝐄, their administration, and the interaction he's been having with us all goes well for the future of this country, because we see the private sector as a partner with government in terms of this whole development program, and we have to play our part. We're willing to do that, and you know, we continue, and the government is willing to work with us. We can, I mean, the sky is the limit for this country, and what we need is for everyone to be on board of this with this development train, so that we can all benefit and prosper from it.
Thank you. And Mr. Tucker.
Ghana's development trajectory is going to be a sharp curve. Now, you have to take in consideration where you're coming from, and the developmental trajectory from moving where we are, which a few years ago we were the second poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. What it takes, the infrastructure build out that it takes to move a country now, which is projected to be the fastest growing economy in the world, that now is a massive. You got to brace yourselves for that developmental trajectory. What is important to recognize, though, is that it cannot be done in a vacuum or in a silo. It has to be done collectively, and it requires government, private sector, opposition deciding on key developmental projects that, regardless of what, we are all working for one common goal, which is to develop the country for everyone. And it's important that you do that, because the last thing you want is to people to be undermining your development. And every time you see people feel that they're left out, they undermine your development. and you get stuck in that cycle. You're like a hamster running and you're not going anywhere. Because what you have people doing is undermining your development. Government and private sector sitting at the table. Private sector builds for financial gain. Governments build for goodwill. And it's important that we put those two together. The goodwill of the people that the government is elected to serve, and us, the leaders in the private sector, build for the economic development of the business community. Together, it will drive the country forward at a rapid pace, but everyone has to be on the same page. And you have to be able to sit in the room and say, listen, we're going to build roads, we're going to build bridges, we're going to open up lands, but we're not just going to give lands. So yes, we have to have 50,000 house lots, but people are going to live in those 50,000 house lots, but where are they going to work? It's going to bottleneck everybody rushing to the city. So the plans of opening West Demerara, opening Berbice, Silica City, Linden, Lethem, all these things have to be opened, and have to be opened with the business community building the industries in those areas to support people working in those areas. You have proper schools, you have proper, all of the investment in what was be considered the quality of life index is important, because your quality of life index is what will keep Guyanese in Guyana. So you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have a good quality of life, you're going to go and seek it somewhere else. So that is something, that's why we're saying that you have to be able to build housing communities, but you also have to build industrial parks close by, led by the vision, not just of the government, but in collaboration with the private sector. Because you have to know what is good in this area. It makes no sense going to put a agriculture or agro-processing industrial park in an area that can't grow crops, right? You know the areas in the country that are infamous or famous for certain crops, so fish, areas that chicken grow well. Those are the areas you put those infrastructure projects in, and you will see that the government is doing that. But it's important to work with the private sector, and it's just going to go up, up, up. So I would think between now and the next election cycle, you're going to continue to see massive growth. Every country in the world kind of pegs good economic growth at around 4%. Guyana will be pushing about 7-8% non-oil, which is tremendous growth outside of the oil and gas sector. So that's important to take into the context of how we're going to be developing within the next, I would say, 36 months.
Just to actually build a little bit on what Tim was saying, I was reading an article today that said that Guyana's debt management strategies actually will help us manage our country's debt without oil revenues. So, which is actually a fantastic thing to say. So what the government has done, and Tim mentioned it, is that they've actually diversified our oil revenues and developing the mining sector, lumber, agriculture, tourism, and so on. AgroFest was a huge success. That was a twin conference between Guyana and Barbados. And it was huge. Even Trinidad is now having an AgroFest to kind of build upon that. So it's a massive step for our economic trajectory. Not only are we generating the wealth, managing it, but we're diversifying it. And as Tim mentioned, it's 7%, which is double the global average with non-oil revenue. And our debt management strategies are not dependent on oil, which actually puts us in a really good position.
Thank you very much. Now, I think Mr. Cheong touched on this a little in his response to the question asked previously. But in terms of your individual assessment of the ease of doing business in Guyana, how would you each assess that currently?
It's getting better, but we still have some work to do. I think the discussion and the discourse that we continue to have between the private sector and the government and the agencies will lend a lot in making it even better. And I think you know, the communication, right? You know, it's good, so that those who are administrative, they can understand the issues that we businesses face from time to time. I think you know, generally, I think it's working towards improving. But you know, there's still some work to be done to get it to a very high level. But we support the improvement in this regard.
Mr. Tucker, would you like to add anything?
I would just say that, you know, we've seen the government working with the private sector to actually make it easier to do business in Guyana. And that's being done via the single window that the Ministry of Housing is trying to put some of, and you got to understand too that our antiquated laws has created bureaucracy. There are things there in our laws, and that's why the meeting the other day with the Attorney General was important, because the private sector is saying, you know, e-commerce is the way to go. You know, access to a bank account is important. You know, electronic payments, using credit cards, using what you call it, a switch, one machine that accepts all your bank cards. Your application for, you know, you're going to register a business. We pushed that when you're registering a business, that number that your business has should be one number. It should be your tax number, your business number, your NIS number for that business, one number. And so a lot of the laws have to change in order to incorporate things like that. The level of work that the Attorney General is doing to create that single window where you're going to build a house, you literally have to go to the EPA, GW, if you're building it in Georgetown, GWI, Central Housing and Planning, Maine City Council, the Fire Department. It's about 6 different agencies, and then you got to keep checking them back and forth, back and forth. You get tied up. I could tell you the GCCI as an organization was about 6 to 8 months or maybe almost a year to get its building plan approved with different, and you're looking at, we sit with the leadership of all these agencies. Now the government is doing is a single window. We put it in, we go to Central Housing and Planning, give them your plan, your application, and then they send it out to everyone, and you come back there in 6 weeks with your approved plan. The legislation would allow each agency a time frame to respond. If they don't, it's an automatic approval on their part. Makes sense. You're going to build out the country, things have to happen quickly, right? You never know how, it's a fragile situation, especially when you're dealing with commodities. I mean, we're a country that they're building on, you know, a lot of natural resources, commodities, things that move, that fluctuate daily. The price of gold can change massively in 8 months, right? Price of oil, right, can change overnight. So when you're building out and you're building on those projected revenues, and you're building, the private sector is building, and they need permits because you have the opportunity. Look, oil is projected to be sold at $100 a barrel. So you have big companies doing the massive investments here, and now I need to build a piece of infrastructure to facilitate that. You know, you want to build a hotel to facilitate the oil boom. You can't wait 8 months to get a permit, to go to the bank, to get the financing, to come back. By that time, oil price dropped, and the big push that was coming might have changed. All the different situations will change. So sometimes you need, especially from the private sector, we sometimes have to time it because it's not the easiest thing to get access to finance. So we sometimes have to time it correctly and make sure that we build on it. So ease of doing business, it's there, as Paul said, but there's a lot of work to be done, and I believe from a legislative standpoint, that's where the bulk of it, and a will to change, to remove the bureaucracy. We've seen the president himself having to step in on many times to make it easier for businesses to come into Guyana and do business through Go Invest. They've done an excellent job, but still some work to be done.
And Mr. Gouveia, how do you feel about the ease of doing business, your assessment?
If we were to get a grade like we were back in school, the engagement from the government, A+. The management of the economy, A+. When it comes to ease of doing business, my personal opinion is they get a strong D. In the sense that they are listening, they are putting things in place, it's just taking too long, as Tim said. We have members in the GCCI who, they've missed the window. They had an entire feasibility plan done 2-3 years ago, and cost of construction has doubled. Cost of financing has gone up. And everything is starting to go up. So now the feasibility of some of these projects now are in jeopardy. Whether or not these people can invest 20, 30 million US dollars, they don't see it as viable anymore, or it's challenging to actually to start executing after you've waited so long. So I would say it's a strong D, and I have no qualms in saying it, because especially if you look at the setting up a business in Guyana, it's a lot of different agencies you have to go to that replicates information. I remember a personal story of mine. I went to a bank that I've been banking with for years, and I said, look, I need to open up a new account for me. And they said, oh, we need your financial records. And I'm like, you have them. You're my bank. And that's the kind of thing. So I know that the president has come down on the banking system and said that they need a lot of work to do, and I know he's putting a lot of pressure. My humble opinion is it needs to happen faster, because the growth of our economy that we just spoke about is happening at such a steep curve that our ease of business is not keeping up, and it's leaving us behind. So what that also does for us is that it actually puts us on the back foot from a global competitive level, because you have international companies that are getting access to finance at home. They're developing the systems at home, and then they're coming here with the delivered product. We have equal opportunity and capacity to do it here, and what the ease of business has to do is give us that opportunity. And I think that can come with a more embracing of technology. I always believe that the speed of the world happens at the speed of technology. Think about how often you get a new iPhone on the market, right? It's almost a year, and that's a lot of research and development. So the single window legislation is one thing, and I know it's coming through, but they should have the platform ready to roll, right? You can't wait for the legislation and then you develop an app or a platform to suit the, what I mean? It's going to work too slow. Think of when you come into the country, we're one of the few countries in the world who are still using a written customs and immigration form. I was lucky enough to travel recently, and all I had to do was put my passport on the scanner, look into a camera, and it said green yes or red go see somebody. And they were processing people, in one of the busiest airports in the world during COVID. And these are the things that we need to embrace. Is we need to have a more pragmatic view and use of technology. Even in Barbados, when you go to Barbados, they have you download an app. You fill out the app ahead of time, and you're pre-cleared through immigration, and that's right there in Barbados. I'm not talking about first world countries anymore. I'm talking about our Caribbean brothers and sisters. And because they have embraced technology, they've embraced the experience, and that will all help with doing business. So I would say that our government needs to take a serious look at the challenges of doing business, and they already have the background of engaging with the business communities, and we just need to start putting some fire under those legislations to help with the technology and have those technology platforms ready to roll the minute that the legislation is. And that would be my personal opinion.
Thank you very much. Now moving on to the other question, with specific reference to the government's stated intention to build a multidimensional economy for sustainable development, what sorts of investments would you say are responsible for shaping of that economic landscape now and in the medium as well as long term?
You got to look at, if you're going to look at what is going to change the landscape in Guyana, I would personally say mass transportation, right? The transportation system has to be done, and we're too much trying to move things with a car. I mean, of course, we're building a road and everything, but if you're going to look at something way in the future, with what is the intention with our relationship with Suriname, our relationship with Brazil, think about it. Wouldn't you like to, from Georgetown, end up, jump on a train and maybe in a couple of days end up in Argentina? So we got to think, we really have to think in Guyana, and I know the president keeps saying it, really outside of the box and think big. And some of the major things that we got to think is how do we change that? We as Guyana sit in a very important place, whereas the only English-speaking country in South America, right? We are the Kuwait of South America in terms of where we're going to end up or the amount of people that we have. So we need to connect. We need to be the gateway to the Caribbean, but we're also the gateway to South America. Both sets of people want to go both places. So Guyana has to become a hub in terms of traveling, interconnection, so big ports, massive airports, good infrastructure, I mean mass transit infrastructure, so that you can move people from and not have to send them through with a bus or a boat and move it with a train, right? Cargo. If you're gonna tap northern Brazil, right, which is landlocked, freight trains all the way to Port Georgetown or Port New Amsterdam, onto a ship. Because if you look at where Brazil is and you have to take a ship, the amount of time it takes a ship to move from, let's say, Rio de Janeiro all the way up to Miami, and of course Brazil is one of the biggest countries in the world, and what they have created, they want to export, and it's going to be easier and cheaper to export it through Guyana. So infrastructure build out and massive, rapid, changing infrastructure is important.
Building a sustainable economy is very important for our future. We all know, oil is a depletable resource. Agriculture, is one of the pillars that we can build a sustainable economy on. When we look at Guyana, we are on the equator. We have sunlight all year round. We have lots of fresh water. We have good agricultural land. Those are key ingredients for successful agriculture. We went to Barbados and we went to a ribbon cutting exercise, and they built a pond to hold, I think, 6 million gallons of water. And Barbados, they strong the water, but the water is not fresh water that they can use for to feed animal or to put on their plants. So they need to store. And we in Guyana, we have so much fresh water, and we take it for granted. I know many times we have European consultants coming here, and they say, looking at our agriculture system, and they say this is one of the few countries that we don't have to conserve water. Many of the other countries, they got recycled water, they got conserved. So we taking it for granted that yes, it can create problems sometimes with flooding, but we have to utilize the resources we have and use it effectively. Yeah, agriculture can be a big thing. I know the Ministry of Agriculture and His Excellency are pushing that, and we see agro-processing, which will complement agriculture, because we know, you go around, you see the many fruits and vegetables that are wasting because we don't have proper agro-processing facilities. Cheaper energy would also add help with agro-processing. So agriculture is one pillar. The forest resources that we have. Many times we see logs being sent to the wharf for export. We can convert those logs to higher value products, I mean, cheaper energy, I mean, is a thing, and the gas to shore project would help that. The hydro project would help that. The solar farms that we're building out across the country would also help those activities become feasible. So yes, indeed, I mean, and also the Deepwater Harbor would help complement that too. It would reduce the cost of bringing stuff in and taking out, because so that would enhance our competitiveness around. So yeah, building a sustainable economy is good, and we're well poised for that.
I think those are excellent points made by the other panelists. The one that I would like to bring up would be education. This government has done so much to develop our education system. Not only are they reaching out into the hinterland communities, they've also developed the GOAL program, which actually offers up to PhD level scholarships for Guyanese. And you could be Guyanese living here or living abroad, it doesn't matter. And what that does now is going to up our economic value as people, right? So, we're going to have more master's level students, more PhDs, people with degrees. And I can tell you, even in my personal company, we have had a lot of our staff who are now doing bachelor's degrees, and they're the first person in their family to ever go to university. And that is a huge, huge, huge transformative project that this government has pushed through. And they're continuing to improve access to education and the level of education that we get as Guyanese people and the affordability of it. So that to me is one of the transformative things, as well as with their attention to the environment. We are noticing that the government has embraced and has strengthened the EPA through the different activist groups out there, and they're embracing them. Obviously, in a responsible way, we have to develop the country whilst maintaining our environmental impact. And I know that the president has said directly that we will be developing Guyana at two pillars. One with the oil and gas, but at the same time we will continue to be net zero, and we will continue to be a carbon sink, and we will continue to be an environmental champion for the world. And that is a very bold statement and a transformative statement. So we can see, they just recently publicly announced that there's a Silica City that's going to be this modern city that's going to be net zero, it's going to be green, and so on. And that is the future. And I believe that those kind of transformative projects is what put countries like Norway solidified on a global scale to be a leader in green energy. Iceland, the entire country is run right now by their thermal energy developed by their geysers and so on. And Guyana could be a leader, a transformative leader in environmental management whilst promoting economic growth. So I think those are some other transformative projects that the government is pushing.
Now, gentlemen, moving on a bit to tourism, hospitality area specifically, 6 international hotels have been commissioned. In what ways do you anticipate these would contribute to the growth of not only the hospitality industry, but the country as a whole?
6 hotels that will at first have to be constructed. Already, just in the construction stage, it's already transforming many lives. From the person that has to, the truck driver that has to bring the sand from the sand pit on the highway, to the construction worker who's working at that site, to the suppliers, steel, stone, cement, everything that surrounds the construction. Then you're completed. So you're looking at skilled labor, 6 hotels. Then you build out now with the employment for 6 hotels. Then you have the persons coming in, because the 6 hotels are not being built because somebody feels like building 6 hotels. 6 hotels are built because there's a need for rooms, there's economic value that the person that is investing is expecting in return, and that is done. And so you have people coming into the country. Now you're looking at airlines, so you got to look at the ground handling staff, the airport staff, the drivers who are going to bring the passengers who coming into the country, the tourists, the business person coming in to the hotel staff. Then you're looking at all of the different services that have to be provided to the hotel. you got landscaping, employment, you got persons supplying goods to the hotel, you got cleaning staff, you got, if the hotel is having an entertainment spot, you got so many different spill-off. It's not just, it's a ripple effect that it has, just by one hotel to a particular community. And you look at the amount of people that have to be trained to work in the hotel. And we know that the hotel industry all over the world, you know, has a fairly high turnover rate of staff, because people, of course, as they get trained and they get upskilled, you develop better people, and of course they grow and they move on to different areas. And so, of course, with that in mind, because we're not just bringing 6 hotels, you're bringing 6, I mean, these hotels, Courtyard by Marriott, you know, AC Marriott, you're looking at the Eden Hotel, you're looking at the Hyatt, you're looking at Sheraton. These are all international brands. Each of them has an operational manual, a training regimen, everything that persons, you know, certain standards. I mean, even from my personal standpoint, if you could imagine, I mean, if I'm in pest control, so I'll have to provide some level of pest control service to that hotel. I now have to train my staff, I have to hire staff to provide that service. So it even benefits myself and the community that I live in, right? Because, of course, the more business I get, then again, the more business I have to buy supplies, I have to, you know, vehicles, hire staff. It goes down into the community. So what essentially you're looking at is you're looking at a very massive, I mean, 6 hotels, and I know that there's going to be more than 6 hotels. It's going to change just from the sod turning all the way up to the service the service that hotel will provide will transform everything around it, and by extension across the country. Because I'm telling you, hotels in Georgetown, benefits at the airport, and everything in between as well.
To add to what Tim said, I mean, Guyanese love cricket, right? And we always complain why England don't come here, why India don't come. We had Bangladesh here the other day, but I mean, people don't follow Bangladesh so much, they follow England. When England toured the Caribbean, there's about 5,000 of the English people would follow the team. We don't have the rooms, I mean, to accommodate those people, those spectators. Similarly, India, I mean, India, we're going to be in Trinidad, right, in another couple of days. They're not coming here. So, you know, when the CPL was launched, I mean, in a few days, all the hotel rooms were sold. I mean, it's because we don't have enough. Once we get this, I mean, the economy, when people come here, they don't come and they eat, they drink, they you know, utilize the services in the country. So it would help, I mean, enhance the economy, help enhance businesses, right? So with more hotels, I think it's go well for the whole economy. You don't want to only create more jobs and people get more disposable income, but it would help, I mean, with the food industry, the restaurants would get more businesses, and I mean, the craft people would get more business. And so it's go well for the future of not only tourism, but commerce as well. Thank you.
So as someone who is in the hotel industry, has been in the hotel industry for a while, I can tell you that the introduction of the 6 hotels to start is a very welcomed development. I remember when the Marriott was announced years ago, you know, one of the biggest things used to come to us about my family and say, hey, aren't you guys worried that they're going to put you out of business? And we're like, guys, the Marriott is a transformative project. Right? It was the first brand name hotel to come to Guyana, and that opened the door for all the ones that Tim just mentioned. And what they did is that they came and they upped the standards. So when the Marriott came, the quality of service that was happening, the level of customer service, the level of the food, the level of the housekeeping staff, everything went up. And the smaller hotels like mine, we had to match. All right. Now we may not have 10 stories or how much ever the Marriott has, but in our small 2-story building, we have the quality of service that people can appreciate. And these 6 hotels are going to do exactly the same thing. It's going to up the standard of hospitality in the country, because anyone who's been in Guyana for a little while, you'll know that customer service has been something that we've always struggled with. Whether it's a restaurant or the bus service or something like that. And the development of the hotel industry is going to feed more tourism development. It's going to feed more customer service development, and it's going to feed more creativity in our tourism. It's going to feed us having some restaurants that are unique, like you may find in New York, or even in Barbados. You have some restaurants that we have never seen here that you're now starting to see develop. So with the hotel industry developing, you're going to up the standard of hospitality and tourism in the country. And as the chairman pointed out, that in February for our oil and gas expo or conference, Guyana was sold out. You could not get accommodation in Guyana during that period. So Guyana was sold out. We had people flying between here and Trinidad or here in Barbados every day or two to attend the conference, and then go back to Barbados or Trinidad, and then come back 2 days later for the day. You know what I mean? Depending on the activities of the day. So Guyana was sold out. We have CPL Carnival happening in September, October. Guyana's gonna be sold out again. So you know what I mean? The president and the government has been doing such a good job at marketing Guyana to foreign investors as a place to visit, and he has secured CPL finals for 5 years. 3 years. CPL finals for 3 years. So for at least the next 3 years, during CPL finals, Guyana is going to be sold out, at least. That is just one. We have the Oil and Gas Expo. We have Building Expo. We have so many different things that the government has been doing, and we need to have more of these hotels being built to meet the capacity of Guyana. And that's aside from the economic development that's happening. If you think about it, the GCCI did a study, and I think that we said in the next 3 to 5 years, there's 50,000 people we're going to need just to augment the growth in our economy. So that's going to be 50,000 people that's going to need places to stay, whether it's temporary or permanent. So these hotels can act as that growth, right? Housing is going to be a big issue, both temporary and permanent. And we're going to need to meet the growing demands of the oil and gas industry. And right now, our oil and gas industry, if we have 2 today, we're going to have 5 in the next 3 years. So you're talking about a doubling. So everything that you see happening out there is going to double in the next three years. And just keep that in mind. So these hotels are going to be full, and we're going to need more. So it's transformative. If I can just digress a little bit into the tourism side of it, just because a big part of my family's business is in tourism. I noticed that the president made an announcement the other day that he is looking for massive ecotourism growth. He wants to really tap into the global tourism product, and that is really the first time that we have seen that commitment in the tourism industry from any government, whether it's the previous government or the PPP government pre-2015. We have never seen that commitment to tourism, and it's something that excites the industry, that they're looking to engage and work with the industry. They issued grants in the last 2 years to people who are looking to develop ecotourism products, existing ecotourism businesses who are looking to expand and capacity build. The government is willing to work with them. Unfortunately, right now, our tourism industry is underdeveloped. Only because that our government has never really paid attention to it. We used to make the comparison. If Jamaica is spending, let's say, $100,000, they're spending a lot more, but let's say for easy math, they're spending $100,000 on their tourism product. Guyana was spending $100 in comparison. And if you look at the level of crime that Jamaica has, the level of drugs that's going through the country, nothing against Jamaica, but comparatively, Guyana is minuscule in terms of our crime levels, in terms of how safe the country is, but we do not have a strong tourism product like Jamaica. Jamaica has done such an awesome job at marketing their country globally, and Guyana, from the president's words in the last week, gives the tourism industry that confidence, that enthusiasm, and that we can really build a strong tourism product right here in Guyana, and the hotels are just part of that. You'll see a lot more to come.
Thank you very much. And we're just about close to wrap up time, but before we close off to the other panelists, this comes off of some of the discussions that Mr. Gouveia just had with us. Guyana has been promoting investment opportunities and bilateral partnerships regionally and internationally. How do you see these efforts impacting the socio-economic growth of the country?
I mean, that's important. I mean, we don't have all this skill set here in Guyana because we are new to oil and gas. The fastest way to get there is to, join with people and countries that have experience and knowledge in this area. And with our local private sector and country working together with those in experience, it helps us to not fall in the trap that many countries fall. We can understand and learn the best practice and implement those, and also our human resources, learning from those people. I mean, and being trained by them also would help develop our capacity, our local capacity to work now and continue in the future in the industry and grow and develop.
And Mr. Tucker, any closing remarks?
I just want to say that thank you very much for inviting me out here and to offer my insight on what is going on. And I would say that, listen, our bilateral partners and our regionally we have to really think as one. And even though we've had our issues and CARICOM has not necessarily been the best outcome or the best thing for Guyana entirely, it is what we have. We've at the GCCI been advocating for the treaty, the revised treaty, to be revised and updated and modernized. The Secretary General has agreed. A lot of the CARICOM leaders that we've spoken to have agreed that for the Caribbean, for the region, each independent country have their power, their strong points, the things that make them, economically viable, make their private sector survive. And of course, Guyana, we have to definitely look at what works for us and how do we get there. And how do we get there? We only have 750,000 people, so it's important that we embrace the region because, of course, that's where the market is. We have to, the Guyanese now have to look at their regional partners. We have to partner with them. We have to think collectively, right? And we have to, I was telling the St. Lucian delegation the other day, I said, it's amazing that we have, and the Belizean, and I'm saying, you're all coming, and I'm saying to them, what is your strong points? What is your number one producer, your best exporter? Then and then you collectively we look at all 15 states and we said, listen, what are you producing the best? And we said, lock it off and sell it regionally and grow that industry. They are the smaller industries that we can work to internally, but on a bigger scale, if you want to have 25 by 2025, and of course the ultimate goal is to reduce maybe about 75% of our imports. We have to realize that in order to do so, that we have to supply the Caribbean and we have to grow these industries internally. So it's important with our partnerships that the impact is cheaper basket of goods at every family table in the region, and that we are able to sell the region, the goods that are produced in the region, to the international standards so that we can feed the world as well. And that's what I would say that is important. And my closing thoughts is that as a country, we have nowhere to go but up. We've been to the bottom, and it's only up from here. And we got to do it, and we got to think stop thinking the negative stuff and just think about how we're going to get through that door and build.
Thank you very much. I want to thank each of the panelists here today, Mr. Timothy Tucker, Mr. Paul Cheong, Mr. Jerry Gouveia Jr. My name is Stacey Carmichael. Also thank the audience, Stacey Carmichael, and this was a panel discussion relating to the PPC's second year in office. It was held under the theme, Guyana's Development Trajectory, Demand for New and Modern Infrastructure. Thank you for joining us.